Hello, everyone. Good evening. Greetings and blessings from the venerable monks and nuns from North America and Europe.
And
today
Australia.
it's a very exciting day for all of us, for monks and nuns in North America.
And Australia. And Brazil.
And of course, good morning from Australia. That's right. So we are going to begin this session by paying respect and homage to the Buddha. Then I will be introducing all the venerable monks and nuns to Ajahn Brahm and to our audience. So let us recite Namo Tassa 3 times together. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. I pay my respect and homage to him, the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the fully enlightened Buddha. Dear Venerable Sirs and of course Bhikkhunis, it is such a great joy to have all of you for our bi-weekly sutra discussion. And for time to time, we had guests of honors with our senior monks to learn from them. And today we have our special guest of honor, Ajahn Brahm. And I don't need to introduce him to you. All of you know who Ajahn Brahm is. But briefly, I would like to introduce other monks and monks who are here in the Zoom platform to our Ajahn Brahm. And then I will read a short bio of Ajahn Brahm. Then we are going to begin the discussion. So Ajahn Brahm, today we have, Bhikkhu Bodhi, the most venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. Actually, he skipped one of his evening programs today to be part of this. Bhikkhu Bodhi. So we would like to welcome Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi to our discussion. And then we have Bhante Jirananda from Ottawa, Canada. And then Venerable Dhammadinna Mehenan Wahanse joining us from Virginia. And Venerable Muniputto joining us from Seattle, USA. And Venerable Bhante Verapanyo joining us from, now he's actually a traveling monk. I don't know, maybe you're joining from Florida at the moment. And we have Venerable Sunanto Tero joining us from Brazil. And we have Venerable Ju Chen joining us from Singapore. Good morning to you. We have Bhante Kusala joining us from here in Mississauga, Toronto, our temple. And we have Bhante Vangsananda joining us from Seattle, USA. We have Venerable Tataloka Bhikkhuni joining us from California. We have Venerable Tri Dao joining us from Florida, St. Petersburg, Florida. And we have Bhikkhuni Sobana and Brahmavara Samaneri joining us from the California. And we have Bhante Kamalasiri joining us from Minnesota. And we have a new face today, Venerable Taidang Taiming. I think I got it right. I see you're from California, right? And Venerable Dhammo joining us from Hamilton, Canada. Then we have Bhante Dhammika joining us from Switzerland. So all these venerable monks and nuns are joining here to learn from you, Ajahn Brahm. So who is Ajahn Brahm? So currently, Ajahn Brahm is the abbot of Bodhinyana Monastery in Serpentine, Western Australia, the spiritual director of the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, a spiritual advisor to the Buddhist Society of Victoria, a spiritual advisor to the Buddhist Society of South Australia, a spiritual patron of the Buddhist Fellowship in Singapore, and is currently working with monks and nuns of all Buddhist traditions to establish the Australian Sangha Association. And as you can see, Ajahn Brahm is wearing many hats. I think those hats must not be too heavy for him. So in October 2004, Ajahn Brahm was awarded the John Curtin Medal for his vision, leadership, and service to the Australian community by Curtin University. Ajahn Brahm has also written a few books. To mention some, Who Ordered This Truckload of Dung? Mindfulness, Bliss, and Beyond, a Meditator's Handbook. The Art of Disappearing, Buddha's Path to Lasting Joy. Don't Worry, Be Grumpy. Stories for making the most of each moment. And his latest book is, of course, Mindfulness. And I don't know whether Ajahn Brahm, you have authored any other books. And if you have done so, feel free to mention them. And of course, Ajahn Brahm is the popular Buddhist teacher to a growing international audience of people keen to learn meditation and develop deeper spiritual understanding. He's also the founding father of an emergent Australian forest tradition of Buddhist monasticism focused on being true to the original roots of the Buddha's teaching of Dhamma and Vinaya. So Ajahn Brahm, it is such a great joy for all of us to welcome you to our Zoom platform to this discussion. And of course, we are going to learn so much from you. And our venerable monks and nuns are going to, maybe they are going to ask questions from you. And there's no order. This doesn't have to be a kind of formal discussion. This is going to be a very friendly discussion to learn something from you. And maybe our venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi might be asking some questions too. And of course, he has translated almost all the sutras which we all use, his translations. So a kind request from our audience on Facebook and YouTube. Dear friends, this is such a great opportunity for all of us. And if possible, please share this program in social media timelines, in Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok or Twitter, so that your friends and family members could learn something from this discussion. So let me begin this discussion by asking one question from Ajahn Brahm. This is a question from Amanda Mandy Smith from Canada. I would like to know how to build better self-confidence.
Better self-confidence to share your metta, your loving kindness, not just with others, but with yourself. Remember when the Buddha said, may all beings be happy, you are included as one of those beings. And as you look at yourself, no different than others, it's easier to create a better sense of self-confidence. And number two, don't be afraid of making mistakes, because mistakes are where we learn. If a mistake happens, you recognize it, you acknowledge it. Don't look for punishment, because punishment complicates the issue. So you learn from it, you made a mistake, and you grow from it. And if you have got any features in you which you feel sort of different, you feel you're not as good as other people, please remember all the trees in the forest are all bent and twisted. So if you're a person who's bent and twisted and damaged, if you're damaged goods, please remember that you belong as one of the wonderful trees in the forest. And the most twisted and damaged trees in the forest, they're usually the most beautiful.
All right, so that's a great answer. So anyone else, any venerable monks and nuns would like to ask questions from Ajahn Brahm?
Venerable.
Yes.
It's not a question to Ajahn Brahm. Actually, some followers are asking me what should they do to ask the questions. They haven't found where to send the questions to you. Could you explain, please, Venerable Chanarapada? Could you hear me?
You asking the question from me or Ajahn Brahm?
No. You, Bhante. Some followers are asking me, how can they send the questions?
Oh, well, they can actually make a comment on Facebook Live and also YouTube Live. We will take their questions.
Okay, so through Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook
comments.
or YouTube.
Okay,
Facebook or YouTube,
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Looks like Venerable Kusala has a question there. He's got his
Yes, Venerable.
Yeah.
So this is about mindfulness. And
Yes.
last week when Bhante Ji was here, when Venerable Pemaratana asked this question about negative effects of mindfulness. And it was, I think, because there are these scientific researches on negative effects of mindfulness in the world. And this question was partially answered, as I believe. And if you just Google the negative effects of mindfulness, the first few things that show up include, can mindfulness be too much of a good thing? The value of a middle way. Too much mindfulness can worsen your mental health. Has the science of mindfulness lost its mind? Is mindfulness making us ill? I'm sure these questions come to you as you have been answering questions about mindfulness, but what would be a response to these scientists looking at the negative side of mindfulness?
It's just like water. You know, water is very dangerous. If you drink too much, you will saturate your lungs. You can drown in water. Water can just flood your countries, and water can create tsunamis. So water is very, very dangerous. So there's a very lot of negative aspects to water, because that's not seeing it in a balanced way. Mindfulness will have to be balanced by the other factors of the Eightfold Path, then it works. So the way it's used at the moment, that first of all, that mindfulness is used for so many worldly things, which really mindfulness can be used for, but it's much better to be used for calming the body, calming the mind, and with all the other factors of the Eightfold Path. With things like your virtue, with your kindness, and then mindfulness with kindness becomes kindfulness, and that is usually very, very strong and very safe. There's more dangers through not being mindful than there's dangers through mindfulness.
So this is a great response, Venerable. And I see that, Miccha Sati can be also taught in a context like this, that, people can focus on the wrong things, like your, and also you have a story, the burglar story, about, how mindfulness can be wrongly taken. Sometimes people mistake mindfulness to be just looking without taking actions.
Yes.
And I'll come back with another question, but not at this moment. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very good. We got a question here from Bhante Jinananda.
Yes, Ajahn Brahm, thank you very much for coming and giving us so much inspirations for our practice, as well as our friends and devotees. My questions is linking to what Bhante Kusala at last said. Actually, I don't remember which talk you gave, that burglar story, the lady who went out and in the meantime, the house was robbed, and the person who is mindful was only mindful about, that story is fabulous because I'm using it to tell people how mindfulness, and right understanding, right effort should come together in order to make a big impact on our practice. So I was asking these questions with Banteji last time with regard to one of the discourses in Majjhima Nikaya Mahachattharya Sutta. So I just want to hear it again from you. How do we practice mindfulness with the presence of right understanding and right effort? Because a lot of people think that mindfulness is just mindfulness, and it is per se they are okay with it, and so after that they complain about many things. Even meditators who come to regular meditation seems do not understand the connection between mindfulness and right understanding and also right effort. So that is my first request for you. Please explain the connection between mindfulness and right understanding, right effort with the story. And the second question is, could you give us some tips of how we be mindful on the cushion as well as in regular day-to-day life? Because a lot of people are good with mindfulness when they sit, but they have a lot of problems how to apply that essence of mindfulness in day-to-day practices. Thank you, Ajahn Brahm.
Okay, it's a long question. But first of all, that story, I think most of you know that story. It's in one of the books somewhere, about the guard who's told to make sure the burglars don't go into the house. And instead of actually doing anything, he just notices burglars going in, burglars going in. He notices jewelry going out, jewelry going out. He notices a truck going in, a lorry going in. He notices the safe going out. And once the mansion has been ransacked and everything's stolen, then the owner of the mansion comes back and said, why did you let these burglars come in and steal all my stuff? And he said, I was mindful all the time, lady. I was mindful. And it's an obvious example there where mindfulness is badly used. It has to come with other responsibilities as well. And that's exactly really what the Buddha said in his practices of things like the Samavayama, that you have to know when there's defilements in the mind, and you have to know just what causes them and how they can be abandoned, and how to create good qualities in the mind and keep those good qualities there. And I love those last two, to arouse good qualities in the mind and keep them there. So in other words, it's something you have to do based on wisdom, and not just on wisdom, on your precepts. The three of those factors of the Eightfold Path are about virtue. When we have good virtue, that creates good qualities in our mind. Even practicing our virtuous conduct is part of the cause for bad states of mind disappearing and good states of mind appearing. And when those good states of mind are there in full, imagine that house. And when you go to the temple, you've got all your friends in there doing a meditation retreat or something. And there's so many people in the house that burglars would leave it alone. It's too dangerous for them because there's too many good qualities in your mind. So that's one of the great ways of creating sort of good states of mind and keeping them there, valuing them. And then you find the burglars here as a simile for the hindrances or for the defilements. They can't come into your mind. So we try and create good virtue and also good view. And this thing, Samavayama, Samma Sankappa, which I stress a lot because it's often overlooked. And the overlooking of the Samma Sankappa, what are those? The three Sankappas, Nekama Sankappa, which is like letting go, renouncing, giving up in a good way, giving up the obstacles in your life, simplifying your life. Navayapada, which is a simile as I understand it for loving kindness, and the gentleness of ahimsaka or vihingsaka. And those qualities, especially the gentleness, I've seen in many meditation retreats, the gentleness is not there. In other words, we're impatient to try and get something. And we forget that nekama means renouncing, giving up, letting things disappear and vanish. This is actually where when we let go of our sense of control, our sense of being, let those things go, then meditation becomes this natural still process. As my teacher Ajahn would often say, the only reason why a bush, the leaves on the bush keep moving is because the wind is blowing. If the wind stops, then the leaf moves less and less and less, until when the wind stops blowing for a couple of hours, then the leaf is perfectly still. It uses no effort to become still. That stillness is like from renunciation, from nekama. You give up trying to control things. Nothing is blowing. As Ajahn Chah taught, that wind stands for your desire, your wanting. When that stops blowing, the mind becomes still. And that's a different type of deep mindfulness, which doesn't create any effort in the sense of wanting things and striving for something in the future, which allows you to be present, which allows you to be peaceful, which allows joy to come up. And that joy is a very beautiful part of the practice of the Eightfold Path, really emphasized in the gradual training which the Buddha taught. And when you focus on that, you understand that when the mind becomes very peaceful and joyful, what could go wrong? I don't know if I answered it fully there, but hopefully I've made some points there which can help with understanding the answer.
Yes, Ajahn Brahm, thank you so much.
Yes, Ajahn Brahm, I think you told the story in your book, Mindfulness, Bliss and Beyond. I remember reading the story there. Yeah, so thank you. Now we have Bante Verapanyo from Florida raise his hand. Bante Verapanyo, ask your question.
Okay, hello, most venerable Ajahn Brahm. I'm really starstruck to be seeing you and to be in this meeting with you. I wanted to ask a question about mental illness and Buddhism. It was my experience that I pursue meditation and Buddhism because of a lot of suffering inside, mental illness, mental suffering. And I also find a lot of people approaching Buddhism for that reason. So I wonder what your position is on the place that Buddhism and meditation have in curing suffering, and specifically complicated mental sufferings and states that come about. Thank you.
There was, for 1 year of my life, I was a school teacher. To become a school teacher, you had to do some educational psychology, some child psychology. And sometimes that you heard this wonderful experiment which was done over in the UK. It was not very wonderful for the participants, but it was wonderful for those who read what happened when the kids, 2 classes, they were tested. The results weren't given out. They were just divided into 2 classes. You are class A, you are class B. And I'll say it very briefly, because again, it's in one of those books of mine. After 1 year of believing they were class B children, they became class B children. It's really quite fascinating if somebody gives us this diagnosis that you have this mental disease, you have that mental disease, then we actually tend to live up to that. And one of the ways out of that is to realize that you don't always have that disease. You exhibit features of, say, all the different levels of autism, of ADHD, of whatever else it's supposed to be. But then, is that really who you are? And as far as Buddhism is concerned, of course, that's not who you are. You're not defined by those labels, believed by experts, and think that you are confined in that prison of mental disease. See if you can understand there's more to you than just those times when you are depressed. Depression is a good one, because depression, I've told many people. I'm not just being simple on depression, but if you are depressed, I tell many people, please enjoy it. Enjoy your depression. There's many positive things about depression. You don't have to go to work. You can get a nice pension. You can actually do whatever you like. One person I was teaching about depression, I said, what do you have for breakfast this morning? He said, I didn't have breakfast. I had ice cream. I'm not normally allowed ice cream for breakfast. I said, well, there you are. That is some of the benefits of depression. And then seeing the positive side of something like depression meant the person felt at ease with it. When he felt at ease with it, he was laughing at it. And that's a powerful way to get out of depression. These are just the ordinary types of depression. It doesn't work for everybody. So a lot of the mental problems people have, and where do they actually come from? And just how can we somehow look at ourselves with a bit more freedom and see these things, they just come, they've got their courses, and when those courses disappear, then the symptoms disappear. People get depressed about being depressed. They get afraid about their mental illness. And sometimes when you acknowledge a person's thoughts about themselves, when you give them kindness, acceptance, then sometimes what was once a very severe mental illness is not so severe. So right. I'm not sure if that answers all the questions, because it's a huge question. Little by little, just see all those things changing, all those mental suffering changing. A lot of times the mental suffering is trying to make things different. I don't want it to be different. You're tired, be tired. You're sort of old, be old. You are feeling a bit crazy this morning. Be a bit crazy this morning. And then you find when you don't fight it, you're not being crazy about being crazy. Well, they often call it in Buddhism the double dukkha. You experience dukkha, but I don't want to feel dukkha. And that's called double dukkha. You're making a double problem there.
Yeah, Ajahn Brahm, there are a lot of people watching this program on Facebook and YouTube, and so I can see people asking a lot of questions, but we also have Venerable monks and nuns asking questions from you. But first, I'm giving the priority to the Venerable monks and nuns. And if monks and nuns don't ask questions, then I'm going to take those questions from the lay people. Bante Kamalasri from Minnesota.
Hello, nice to see you. What is your question?
Bante, I have a question. Actually, it is not only from me. There's some people with me also. I like if you answer to that, and I like if Bhikkhu Bodhi also contribute something about that. This question about self-mortification or Atta-Kilmatana Yoga, how do you explain it and how do you identify it? That's the question.
I think you know that Atta Kilamata Anuyoga, the Kilamata is often translated as things which make you tired, exhaust you, take away your energy. And I like that idea because sometimes you either just strive and meditated and become quite exhausted. And instead of doing that, you learn how to look after your body. You exercise it, you rest, and you clean it. Because remember what the Buddha was doing before, he sat under the Bodhi tree. He was so thin, not eating properly, no energy. And the pain in the body must have been very, very strong, even though he was young. And that sort of striving and just wearing the body down. I've seen some monks who I've been very friendly with. They strive very hard. And yes, they do get to a certain degree of strength of mind. They use willpower, and that willpower creates, very briefly, ego, a sense of self, that I'm doing this, I've striven. And the idea of letting go, realizing anatta, there's no self in there anyway. So why can't we just stop employing the tools of a self? Stop, as the Buddha said to Angulimala, stop. And I like that saying, stop, And that's one of the reasons why when people say in the place where I live, like in Perth, there's hardly any recognition of Buddhism. And I say, you're wrong. And every street corner, there's a stop sign. And I say, look at that stop sign. What's it telling you to do? Little things like that means that you don't strive and self-mortificate or tire yourself out. You keep your energy strong. And the energy, the inner energy comes up very strong. You have all the power in the world you need to develop deep meditation or to work hard, whichever one you want to do. Please excuse me for answering the questions briefly, but I do realize that they can give a Dharma sermon on every one of these great questions. I'm just doing it briefly to give you a taste.
And Bhante Bodhi, would you like to add anything there? I think
I really don't have anything to add. It was a very good answer.
okay,
Because
wonderful.
usually we think if we base on the suttas, we think of Attakila Matanu Yoga as being the practices only of the outside, the non-Buddhist ascetics. But also we see in Buddhism, even amongst monastics, there's probably the two tendencies of indulgence in sensual pleasures, even if it's not transgressing against the parajikas. But there are other ways of just living a kind of soft, luxurious life of self-indulgence. And also, as Ajahn Brahm mentioned, the kind of excessive striving, excessive exertion, so that you don't get calmness and peace of mind. I mean, it's even a way of, like in meditation, when people are doing meditation, for example, anapanasati, they think they have to force the mind onto the breath, push and push and push the mind, and then the mind never really settles down. So the way, sort of the middle way, is just sort of to relax, make the body soft and gentle, and then the mind almost goes to the breath naturally without too much exertion.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Oh, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you. And Venerable Trida, you raised your hand. He's from Florida. It's your turn to ask the question from Ajahn Brahm.
Yes. Salutations to all of the Venerables and Bhantes across the world. Thank you for having me. Ajahn Brahm, I'm wondering where you stand with the intersection with psychotherapy and our Buddhist philosophies, the merging of the two in treating mental health nowadays.
Well, this is some parts of it, like you've done some karma in the past, bad karma in the past, you've been traumatized by that bad karma. I mean, how can you let that go? And just over the last few years, this is just an example of extreme trauma and how to overcome it. People are from overseas who come to places like Australia, which is pretty safe, and they have got enormous post-traumatic stress. And that's caused by literally being tortured. In some regimes over in the world, they've managed to escape physically, but the trauma which they have in their mind continues with them. They keep dreaming of that, keep being afraid of the darkness, of things which they can recognize as similar to the places where they're brutalized and raped, and goodness knows what else went on with them. And some of these teachings which we have on loving kindness, I was amazed at how people take up some of these things which you teach in Buddhism and how powerfully it worked. And similarly, I'm looking at is the opening the door of your heart. And people imagine, I'll tell you this very quickly, they imagine a heart in their chest. When they feel safe, when they feel ready for this, opening those doors, letting a staircase come down, and all those little people then, when they were young girls and they were brutally abused, young kids who were beaten to a pulp sometimes, they managed to escape somehow or other, endure. And they come to a nice, safe country where that will not happen to them again, but the memories are still there. And how they get past those memories, I was going to say overcome, but that's not the right word. How they get past those memories, they allow those memories to come in. The door of my heart is open to you. Little girl, didn't know what was happening, was brutally abused. little boy was never given any love, but again, beaten, made to work like a slave, and raped as well. And you allow those people to come in. Instead of trying to get rid of them, you embrace them. That's what loving kindness is. The door of my heart is open to all of you. And the people who've done this have just amazed me, because you talk to them afterwards and they never forget what happened, but it doesn't burden them again. And they can teach other people who have been through even less trauma, but similar trauma, just how you can let that go, how you can be free of that pain of the past. And to me, it's inspiring when you see some of these teachings of Buddhism and how they can really affect modern psychology and therapy in a way which is not done enough. That's just, and also just the idea of saying earlier, you give a person a name, that you're traumatized, you're a victim, you're abused, and how you can actually overcome that is actually expand that idea. Okay, this will make you laugh, but I was very inspired by the person who said this. In the local prisons in Australia, there was one prisoner, and he had murdered. He admitted it. He'd murdered people. That's a pretty gross crime. But then he read one of the books and the stories of the two bad bricks in the wall. Why do you always focus on negativity, on the crooked bricks in the wall? And apparently after reading that, the other monks who went to see him said he was going around the prison saying, there's only 2 people I murdered, only 2 people. There's many other people I met in my life I didn't murder at all. It's only 2 bad bricks. And when he said that, people said, oh, come on, Ajahn Brahm, you're demeaning the karma of those bad things. But he had put it in perspective instead of just focusing on it. So why can't, in psychology, we don't just focus on the faults of our past? What about the positive part of our past, to balance it? And found out, this is not my suggestion, this is local psychologists, psychiatrists who have been over to places like our monasteries and learned different ways of healing people. Not healing by getting rid of their faults, by accepting their faults, allowing those people with their faults to be in society, because they're not just thinking of their faults, they are very aware of all the positive things they've done in their life. And it's had some brilliant results. So I think the job of Buddhism is actually to add to the wisdom of therapy, to add to the deeper understanding of psychology, and how this can be very practical for non-Buddhists, everybody in this world who feels had a hard time of life so far. Is that okay?
Thank you, Venerable Sir. We rejoice in your answer. Thank you. Sadhu.
Oh, thank you, Sadhu, Sadhu. I know, Ajahn Brahm, there are a lot of lay people who are also asking questions, but this is a kind reminder to our lay friends. We monks and nuns are here to learn from Ajahn Brahm today, so I'm just giving the priority to the monks and nuns. And once they stop asking questions from Ajahn Brahm, then I will take your questions. So now, next, Bhante Kusala, you raised your hand again. This is your turn to ask a question.
Venerable, this is about the bliss and beyond part. And this is the first thing is about the first jhana, where we find viveka jang piti sukhang, happiness and pleasure born of viveka, seclusion. And then in the second jhana, we find samadhi jang piti sukhang, happiness and pleasure born of samadhi, stillness, as you translated. And where in these places we find the disappearance of body, or does it happen at all, or are we just aware of the body, but we don't pay attention to any sense doors? So how do we respond to this?
My response to it is the Viveka Japiti Sukha. The Viveka is like the seclusion from your 5 senses. In other words, you cannot see, you cannot hear, you cannot smell, you cannot taste, you cannot touch. You cannot feel those senses. And the reason why that happens is that it is stillness. Just like the computer right in front of you, if nothing moves, if nothing changes, you don't press any buttons, your screen will turn off. It's the nature of a computer screen only to respond to things changing, to moving. The same as the brain and the mind too. If you close your eyes, after a while, you don't see anything. If there's an ambient sound in the background, you can't hear anything after a while. And the smell, the taste, you're not eating when you're meditating, I hope, which means that those senses are pretty easy to turn off. The sense of physical touch, that is hard to turn off. Same with sound, if there's a loud sound. The physical touch, the way we usually overcome that is just allow the mind to go to the breath, which is a very fine physical touch. Allow the mind to look at the breath with joy and happiness. Then that becomes like a chitta sankhara. It's coming from the mind, not from the body. So you're turning off the five senses, basically. And once those five senses are turned off, then usually the first thing which you realize in the mind is this great nimittas, the lights, the joys in the mind. We're really, really happy. And when that you go into those things, then just you have these jhanas. And after the first jhana, what is that happiness you're watching? Where did that come from? It's always the causes and effects, the great teaching of the Buddha. There's nothing really there. It's the causes and the effects. And the causes, you've been renounced from the five senses. Those are gone. So you just have the mind, the chitta, and just be free of the irritation of the five senses. That is a huge happiness, a great happiness. It's a similar happiness to when people have out-of-the-body experiences, and when they die, have near-death experiences. So near-death experiences, so they will say, it's so beautiful, so happy. They don't want to come back. And they're forced to come back. But anyway, because of karma. But anyway, when you realize the happiness when you're free of the five senses, oh, so wonderful. And that becomes part of the bliss of the first jhana. Say part of it is the bliss of the first jhana, but it's much more intense, pure than, say, near-death experiences. And then, of course, eventually the mind does become still. The last bit of holding on to that bliss disappears. And then you're perfectly still. It's weird to actually experience that stillness, just how blissful that is. You can't do anything, otherwise it's not called stillness. But that's a samadhija, piti sukha. So it's weird in the sense that when you first start meditating, you think, oh, this is really happy, this is wonderful. The deeper you go in meditation, just the happiness and joy just build. It's just like you go to one peak in the mountains and you think that's the highest, and then you find out there's another one. The second jhana, you think, I can't get better than this. And then there's another jhana behind there, or it's inside of it rather than behind it. And then you find that each one of these is a more refined joy and happiness. And it's because many things have disappeared. First jhana, the five senses have basically disappeared. In the second jhana, this thing we call will has disappeared. It's only a temporary disappearance, but still, you're free of this for a while. And in the third jhana, it's piti. That very coarse form of happiness disappears. And in the fourth jhana, you got this wonderful equanimity. And equanimity, or contentment, I prefer calling it these days, to make it a more an emotional word than an intellectual word. And the contentment, nothing you need, nothing you want. So if you're happy in there. And even that's supposed to be equanimity, it is still blissful. And so the Buddha sometimes said, it's no peka sukha. It's not a contradiction in terms, it's not an oxymoron. It's just the fact that contentment is very blissful, very satisfying. And then just to add to this, as you're very still, enjoying the fourth jhana, and that's the great mindfulness there, the purity of mindfulness. That's where you get the peak of mindfulness. But because it's so still, it starts to disappear. It starts vanishing. And the stages of the arupas is just where the mind is just disappearing slowly. It's turning off. So that's what, hopefully that answers your question. But of course, the best way is just to go and do it, or just not do it. So that's the wrong word. Allow it to happen.
Thank you very much.
I think, of course, Ajahn Brahm, you can give a couple of hours Dhamma talk in these questions, but this is just one and have a discussion.
Yeah.
But this answer is more than enough, I guess, and maybe later on they can ask more questions. So Ajahn Brahm, I don't know whether you noticed, we have more monks and nuns joined for this discussion, including Bhante Yogavacha Rahula from Washington, D.C.
Ah, wonderful.
And Bhante Pevaratana from Pittsburgh, and Bhante Sila from Milwaukee, and of course Bhante Revata from Toronto, and Bhante Sankicha from Detroit, and Bhante Damangsa from Florida. And also, I don't know the name of this Siri Sangamit. Anyways, he disappeared. So our next monk.
Sir. Venerable sir.
Oh, yeah.
Venerable sir. Yeah.
Hi.
Siri
How are
Sangam
you?
Padam. Muppalavanna. Maharaga
very-
Muppalavanna.
Okay.
Sri Lanka.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And now Bhante Sudasu from New York is going to ask the question next. And I know Bhante Sudasu, you had for Monk's Chat for Ajahn Brahm a couple of weeks ago. So what's your question?
Hi. Yeah. So please ask.
We can't hear you, Bhante Sudasu. Something's wrong with you. Okay, maybe you can fix your mic. Next, Bhante Sunanto from Brazil. Please ask your question from Ajahn Brahm.
Yes, Venerable, I've heard you more than once emphasizing the joy, happiness, instead of dukkha, as a way to explain the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. It's particularly important for my people. I mean, Brazilians, as all of you know, are very happy and difficult to calm down. And understanding Buddhism as suffering, that's something that really, really scares them more than motivates them to follow the Dhamma. So, as you know me, I'm usually a very happy person, but it's not enough to devote, to spread the Dhamma if I emphasize dukkha instead of happiness, instead of nirodha, cessation of dukkha. So I'm asking you a hint, a kind of advice of how to approach that properly. I'm afraid I haven't been very successful on that. Would you please tell me?
Sometimes people in the West, I'm talking in Brazil as well, I'm not in the West, I'm in the deep South, Australia. But anyway, that they like short sayings. Sometimes we speak too much and the meanings are not sort of, they don't catch people. So I like a little saying, it was some philosopher, but it could have been the Buddha, and that was that when you want something more, you cannot enjoy what you already have. Little sayings like that. And it makes a connection between wanting and not enjoying. And it becomes very powerful in in your meditation. I've seen some people, they got great nimittas, they're getting very deep, but they want the jhanas. And then when they do things like that, they stop the possibility of jhanas happening. Just too much wanting. So it's a nice little saying, when you want something more, you can't enjoy what you already have. So what do you have right now as a monk? You live a simple life. You don't demand very much, and see if you can just teach by your lifestyle. You may know that I live in a little cave. This is my office here, but where I live, spend most of the time, is in a cave, and it's very small. When I'm not there, I allow people to come and have a look inside and see how I really live. And because it's small and simple, that encourages people. You don't want very much, so you can enjoy what you already have. And that simplicity is fantastic. And even I got that idea, from Ajahn, the teacher, because usually he had his personal quarters and only his attendant was allowed up there. But one day he asked me to go and get something from his personal quarters. And when I went up there, at this time, I mean, he was so famous, and kings and queens and generals and stuff, and really rich people were seeing if they could give something to him. And I thought his personal quarters must be amazing. And they were amazing, but not what I expected. There was hardly anything there. It was like that he wasn't even living there. There's a grass mat, a wooden pillow, and I think just one or two robes on the line, and that was it. There's nothing which you could look upon as something who was basically had so many people wanting to give him things. There was nothing like that there at all. And that inspired me. It wasn't as if that what he taught was great, but how he lived. And so sometimes that if you're happy and you don't ask for things, then people realize just the secret of happiness. Not wanting any more. This is good enough. You sit down and meditate like that. I don't want anything more. This is good enough. When you're sleepy, this is good enough. If you don't want anything, you don't fight it. Sleepiness disappears very quickly. And the breath comes up, as Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi so wonderfully said, it's just natural. And then you get into deep meditation quite naturally. You don't want anything else at all in the world. And that's the idea of the art of disappearing. It's not coming from you. It's not what you want. It's just what happens when you get out of the way, when you disappear. And the sense of self gets less and less and less. Okay.
All right.
That was a great answer. Thank you very much, Ajahn.
Okay, is there any venerable monk or nun who would like to ask the question from Ajahn Brahm? Okay, there's no hand raised, so let me take a question from the audience. And this is Donald Justice from USA. Ajahn Brahm, he's asking a question. I live with chronic physical discomfort. I do my best to remain mindful or as witness to living. I do my best to accept the truth that this is part of this human experience. And I'm not the only one who suffers from just this one experience, but many others do. But I'm still finding it a struggle to fully accept this and befriend this physical sensation. What can I do to let go, further to go into this fear of acceptance of this impermanent condition?
It is, this was one of the ways of meditation, very simple, which didn't even come from a Buddhist text. It could very well have done. And I always call it the Emperor's Three Questions meditation. When people came to me and they said they were very sick, they were really hurting, either physically or emotionally. And how can we meditate? We can't watch the breath because these feelings, both emotional and physical, are so strong. And then I let them know the Emperor's Three Questions is, what's the most important time? Who's the most important person? What's the most important thing to do? And the most important time is always now. That's a very simple answer. And who is the most important person? This was a story from Tolstoy. And he said the most important person is the one right in front of you right now. And what does that mean in meditation? That means whatever you're experiencing right now, that's the most important thing in the whole world. Don't try and get rid of that to watch the breath, or don't try and sort of supplant that with a limiter or something. Whatever you are experiencing right now is the most important thing in the world. And what do you do with it? You care for it. You don't try and cure it and make it something different. You open the door of your heart to it right now and see what happens. And the brilliant thing is that, I teach that from summing up my own experiences. One of the most intense experiences was having scrub typhus in Northeast Thailand about 45 years ago. And of course, the treatment was really rough, but nevertheless, nothing was curing me. And so one day I was just meditating. I just got so tired, really exhausted. It's really hard even to stand up, and there was no real people caring for you in there. It was the monks' ward of Ubon Hospital. And at night time, for 12 hours at night, there was no nurse available. You were just left by yourself for 12 hours at night time. But anyhow, they're feeling really down, hardly any energy at all. I decided just to meditate, not in the sense of having a good posture, not in the sense of doing a particular process, really coming into this moment, experiencing these feelings and being kind to them. I couldn't do anything else. But just to see yourself getting into such a very deep meditation, that just mind-blowing. That it proved to me it doesn't matter how weak your body is or how sick it is. But the mind is something different. And if you can access that mind and just really go into it, then the body just basically disappears. You have a wonderful time, and the contrast between beforehand being really sick and weak. I was only about 25 years of age. I should be really strong at that time, but could hardly stand up. And being able to go into those deep meditations was so fantastic. And it showed me that what can be done with people. There was another gentleman here years ago. He was a lay person. He had such a heavy pain in his back. He told me he was one of the few people in Australia who was allowed any drug at all, even the most sort of illegal ones. He could actually get them, purchase them or whatever. And because his pain was so great, he told me that the hospital had given him a way to explain it to people. He had a CAT scan. It said, all your brain tells us is you're experiencing the pain 24 hours, 7 days a week. The same as if you were having your arm cut off with a chainsaw, no anesthetic. So it's intense. And he said that the only way he could get through that, past that, was when he started to get into deep meditation. And I remember him coming to see me, and he said that he'd finally done it. And I said, well, done what? He said, I got the machine flat. And I said, well, the ECG? He said, no, the EEG as well. When he was being tested. He had to get into the jhanas. It was too painful otherwise. So he learned, trial and error many, many times to overcome these things. And he was just, had this chronic pain all the time. Again, I say these things because it can be done if you know how to let go of your sense of self, stop fighting, stop complaining, stop trying. And sometimes you have a lot of pain and distress. Sometimes that becomes the motivation to try something different, to try something new. You can't just do the ordinary ways, which means you try something amazing. Letting it go or letting it be means you stop. So those are a few suggestions. It probably won't work for you, but I say those things because maybe it might. All right.
Thank you, Ajahn Brahm. So I hope Bhante Sudas, you fixed your mic. Now your turn to ask the question from Ajahn Brahm. Bhante Sudas from New York.
Okay, can you hear me this time?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, good. So my question is about the Yogananda Sutta. So in the Yogananda Sutta, the Buddha talks about 4 ways of practicing the path. And most teachers have very good things to say about the first 3 and nothing about the 4th. So the 4th one, Dhammudacha Vigahita. What the heck does this mean? And how do we actually apply this in meditation practice? Thank you.
Okay, it's obviously the first three, samatha, then samatha, then vipassana, samatha, and samatha vipassana as a pair. What happens here is that I take this as there's something which really inspires you, moves you, and you get very deep in your meditation. And it's not sort of cultivating in this, well, it is cultivating, but it's this one real big thing which happens. And then that allows you to go into a deep meditation. And then the path becomes clear and you cultivate that path. So it's as if I take this, and other people can argue with me, but I interpreted this when I read it as stream winning. The path becomes clear and you cultivate that path. All those four have the same endings. The path becomes clear, you cultivate that path. It's actually how that path becomes clear. Samatha vipassana, vipassana samatha. Samatha vipassana is a pair. Even samatha vipassana, it means samatha takes the lead, vipassana is always coming behind. Vipassana takes the lead, samatha is coming behind. You can't separate them. So I understand that as sometimes you hear a great teaching, you have an experience in life, and sometimes that's so powerful that frees your mind from the hindrances enough to be able to see the Dhamma. It's an interesting aside. It can also mean just, say you were a stream winner in a previous life, and they've been reborn in this life, and there's something stimulates, you to remember. So the experience of stream winning. Because when a person is a stream winner before, in a previous life, are they a stream winner when they're a baby? They don't even know how to say their own name. Their neural faculties aren't fully developed yet. Or do they have to re-experience that insight, that seeing in this life to re-experience, to know, yeah, they're a stream winner again. And I'm told that so with many monks, and many of the monks, and I agree with them, if you're a stream winner in the previous life, you re-experience it again in this life, you have to. So that can also be included in that fourth. Any comments about that?
No, that's good. Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah, I could contribute something to this.
Oh, please, yes.
Yes, Bhante Bodhi.
Yeah, I take some examples of this. It's Dhammu Dacha Manasang. So the mind is gripped by some kind of agitation about Dhammas, about the Dhamma. So some good examples of this maybe is Bahya from the Udana. Like he thought that he was an Arhat, and then this Deva told him that you're not an Arhat. And his mind was gripped by such agitation that he just traveled continuously across India to come to meet the Buddha. And then as soon as he heard the teaching from the Buddha, he was able to attain a very concise, cryptic, enigmatic statements by the Buddha. He was able to attain arhatship right on the spot, because that agitation was an agitation based on the desire to understand the ultimate liberating truth. And so when he heard some enlightening teaching, then he could attain immediate realization. Another example is indicated in some verse that occurs in the Therigatha. It's a bhikkhuni by the name of Siha, lioness, and she says something like, for 7 years she went around not enjoying a moment of peace. The mind was constantly agitated by lust, by sensual lust. And then she says that it's hopeless for me, I don't want to disrobe. So she takes a rope and goes into the forest, puts one end of the rope, ties it around the tree. Then she takes the other end of the rope, forms a noose, puts it over her neck, and she's just about to jump off the branch when suddenly her mind is liberated from the taints and she becomes Arhat. So
do you recommend that practice?
yeah, I was going to say, this isn't the kind of thing that Venerable Sudaso said, how do we apply this to our own practice? I think that this is not something that the fourth one isn't something that we really apply to our practice, but it's something that occurs on its own.
Better not. Better not.
Okay, thank you, Bhante Bodhi, for adding more insights to this discussion. We have Bhante Sankitya from Detroit raised his hand. So now it's your turn to ask the question from Ajahn Brahm.
Thank you, Bhante. It's been a great pleasure to listen to our great inspiration, Ajahn Brahm. Bhante, what is your thought actually? Why Buddha came up with suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path leading to it, instead of your explanation on happiness, cause of happiness, experiencing it, and path leading to the happiness?
Well, my explanation is just, to put it into modern words, it's just marketing. It makes people who have no idea about Buddhism come closer to Buddhism. There are some people, who they need, the Buddha's teaching of suffering, because they have lots of suffering in their life and they want to find a way beyond that suffering. So, we talk in different ways to different people. We use their language, we use their concepts, and then we have to make that decision of what is the best way of teaching. But in the end, you may start to teach, in happiness, the cause of happiness, why there's sometimes no happiness, the way why unhappiness comes. In the end, you always have to go back to the Four Noble Truths. That's more essential. Because sometimes there's three types of suffering, and sometimes those three types of suffering are incredibly powerful. To find out even the five senses, however they are, they're always suffering. And this is why, sometimes people, they go to temples, they just want to get rid of their worldly problems. They don't want to sort of transcend samsara and leave it. They're just trying to live a healthier life, a happier life, a more successful life. And so they come there just looking for tricks. They don't have to suffer so much. Not realizing just the whole samsara is suffering. The whole five senses and the sixth sense too is suffering. That's one of the reasons I like that beautiful saying in the Samyutta, I think it was Wajira, the bhikkhuni. And she gave this saying of what it's like to be a bhikkhuni who's an arahat, enlightened bhikkhuni. She said it's just suffering arising, suffering passing away. But she was enlightened. How could she be suffering? She was suffering because that's the nature of sensory existence. Even in its highest form, it's still dukkha. But sometimes you can't tell teachings like that to people who are still very much living in the world. They don't want to disappear. They just want to have some skillful means so they don't have to suffer so much in the future. You spend a lot of your life teaching people just not to get so upset when they lose their loved one in the funeral service. And to the death, teach them just how to try and, when they get divorced or when they get married, try and do the very best. But a lot of times you can't really, at say a marriage, teach the real teachings. I sometimes have the marriages, as you read in those books, I teach the 3 rings of marriage. When boy and girl falls in love, they have the engagement ring, the wedding ring. What's the third one?
Suffering.
Suffering.
Yes.
I was thinking like maybe Buddha had to come up with that term because people, like we are so much conditioned by suffering than happiness.
Yes, true. But we conditioned by the both. But that was especially to his first disciples. These were, real spiritual seekers who were ready to sacrifice everything to actually find out the truth. They weren't scared of the deep teachings. Sometimes I teach deep teachings, how the Buddha taught, and some of you say, we don't want to hear that. You're not really ready for that. So that's really disappointing. But so you teach gradually.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, thank you so much, Ajahn Brahm, for that beautiful answer. And now we have Bhante Jinananda raised his hand. It's your turn to ask the question. And then after you is the Venerable Tata Loka Bhikkhuni.
Yes, Bhante, thank you. My question is with regard to Bhikkhu Bodhi's explanation about the Dhammuddacca Vigrahita Citta. So, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, in that case, Venerable Saurna during the time of the Buddha had the Dhammuddacca Vigrahita Citta because he was meditating without any rest to attain enlightenment. Because of the intense effort he put forward, he could not attain to any experience about that. Is that the same thing according to explanation? He had that, in strong mind to be enlightened, that makes him, having some backward feeling. Could you please elaborate?
I think it could be. I'm not really sure, but it could be.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
next.
Bhante.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that the text says that he attained realization immediately after hearing the Buddha's discourse. So it could actually, I think in his case, he probably just went back to practice in a more balanced way, a calmer way. So I don't think he would quite fit into that model. I think that model is a sort of instantaneous realization that takes place due to the drive from that agitation about the Dhamma.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, next, Bhikkhuni Tata Loka, it's your turn to ask the question from Ajahn Brahm.
Greetings, Ajahn.
Greetings.
Ajahn, do you think we still have arahants in the world? And do you think we also can become arahants now?
It's not a question of thinking. It's a question of now. Do you see them? And sometimes you have to look at a person for a long time, and before you can really understand where they're at in this world. And that's why I said that for many years, living with someone like an Ajahn Chah, you realize that he was a very powerful monk, but how powerful? And then after a while, honestly, the one time it really made me confident that Ajahn Chah was an arahat. It was not just being with him for a while, but seeing his room and seeing how simple he lived when he could have had so many comforts. He wasn't hiding anything, that's just his character. He was a renunciant, gave up, let go. So that gave me a lot of confidence in him. But there's also another thing, is to understand that as you get deeper in the meditations, deeper in your insights, it's not as if you can actually say, that I am enlightened, I am an arahat. Anyone who says that is almost absolutely 100% they're not. Because it's not a personal attainment, it's a personal vanishing, disappearance. The sense of self is gone. And that's one of the reasons why one of the suttas which I always recommend was the time when Ananda was with the Buddha. And then these two monks came up and they said, one who's an arahat never thinks they're better than anybody else, never thinks they're worse than anyone else, never thinks they're the same as anybody else. And then they both said the same. And then the Buddha told one Ananda, those are two arahats. He said, that's how they come and tell me that the arahat experience has happened. They're not better, they're not worse, they're not the same, they've just basically disappeared. So it's one of the reasons why it's hard to see and know arahats. But certainly they happen. Females as well. It's not just a prerogative of men. So the bhikkhunis go for it. Or just rather disappear, vanish. Okay.
Okay. So we have Bhante Sudasu raised his hand again. Maybe he has another question to ask. Bhante Sudasu from New York.
Okay, Ajahn, so I have another question. This one is about the Kachanagota Sutta. So in the Kachanagota Sutta, the Buddha defines right view. He says there's two kinds of wrong view. So the wrong view that things exist, attita, and the wrong view that things don't exist, nattita. And he says that right view is not falling into either extreme. And so I have two questions on this. First one is, how can we develop that kind of perspective in our meditation practice? And the second related question is, what's the difference between cessation, nirodha, and non-existence, nattita?
Okay. It's instead of please excuse me, but I was a theoretical physics graduate, so I will explain this in physics terms. That does matter exist? What is matter? And as far as science is concerned, they can never find sort of a fundamental particle, on which everything else is built up from. Every time they discover some new fundamental particle, it's always got a lifespan, a lifespan. When it disappears, what happens next? It just mutates into something else. In other words, that mutating cause and effect, nothing solid, always there, nothing always existing, but always changing, always mutating. And this is just a little insight. I'm not quite sure how valid it is, but it's a fun insight to have. It's like the idea of an atom. An atom is a Greek word, meaning indivisible. And the atom was broken by Rutherford and split. So I realized atom is not the fundamental particle of existence. And what is the Sanskrit word for the soul, the self? Atma. Is there some connection between those two words? Well, probably there is. An Atma, the idea of an Atma is like an indivisible fundamental essence which makes up this thing we call life or human being. And to be able to see that as not a thing, but a process, just like fundamental particles, just like rupa. One thing causes another thing, which causes another thing, which causes another thing. Then the whole process is nothing which is always there in the beginning, always there in the end. So nothing can be destroyed, nothing can be annihilated, but as a process happens. A causes B, which causes C, which causes D. And eventually, once that process finishes, that's called nirodha. But of course, there's the temporary nirodhas, in deep meditation, but nibbana is when everything ceases. The whole process is gone. So little by little, we understand that's one of the greatest suttas. Instead of seeing existence or non-existence, it's dependent origination. This causes that causes something else. And that whole process, instead of one thing always being there, or one thing hidden inside everything else, that whole process is the nature of our life. It's also the nature of physical stuff as well. There's no fundamental particle in science. There's no fundamental essence to each one of you. So nothing gets destroyed. It just ends. Okay?
All right. So,
yeah, go
on. We have just 10 more minutes to go. 3 hands raised. And also the lay people are so desperate to ask some question from Ajahn Brahm too. So Venerable Muniputo from Seattle, ask your question briefly, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for Venerable Ajahn Brahm for being here. And I would like to ask a short question from my student in Cambodia. And her question is, what is the difference between dana and yaga? Thank you.
It's both. Sometimes people give dana as a business deal. In other words, they want their name on the wall of the temple, or they want to get rid of sickness, Or they just want to give dana so that kids can pass their degrees. I call that business, not real dana. It's sort of dana, but chaga is where they really give up. And it's not just things. Chaga of just giving up your sense of self, giving up your who you think you are, giving up your how much time have you given up for today, and how much time have people who organize this? That's chaga. And this is actually where you give up more deeply, not expecting anything back in return. To me, that's more like what chaga is. Dana is a lot of times, in practice, people expecting something back. Of course, that is an approximation. But any time which you give, and you know what giving really is and what's the best way to give. And I always mention this to people in many countries. The highest physical dana you can do when the Buddha has passed away is to give donations or give gifts to both sanghas, combined bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. I say that because bhikkhunis are still giving a hard time in this world by people who pretend to be Buddhists. They don't really know what the Buddhism teaches. I just added that in there, just as one of the things I get into promoting the joint sangha. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Bhante Kusala raised his hand again. It's your turn now.
So, Venerable, I have been trying to help this young man who has cocaine addiction, cocaine abuse, and I don't find any success. And when put into rehab centers, they complain, they come home to the comfort zone, and they somehow find ways to steal the money from parents, and somehow keep trying to do this abusive stuff for their brain, for the body, and even meditation for them, for this person particularly, is very discomforting. Staying focused for even 10 minutes has been very hard. So I don't know where to begin. I teach about kindness, I give companionship, and I try these other techniques too, like being a non-judgmental presence and making friends with this person particularly. But I haven't found any success for almost a year now. So I wonder if you have any advice on this.
People with addictions, a lot of times, they don't want to give up those addictions. They don't feel good about themselves. They don't feel as if they are worthy. So sometimes just say, don't try and give up the addiction. Give up your sense of you're not worthy enough. You're fine, you can still be my friend, even though you're addicted. And give them that sort of the self-love, self-acceptance, if you possibly can. I mean, this is pushing the envelope a little bit far, but give it a try. Say, can you be at peace with yourself as you are? Don't try and cure yourself, care for yourself. Because all the people who I've seen with addictions, there's a big, why are you addicted? And sometimes there are these paths open, these doors are open, they won't take them because they don't think they deserve it. Or sometimes they're afraid. Their addiction is like a prison. And going out of prison, if you've been in that prison for a while, it's what you're used to. It's very tough. Those are just some suggestions. They may not be right for that person, but it's a different way of looking. Does that make sense? Okay.
All right. So now next is Venerable Dhammadinna. It's your turn to ask the question from Ajahn Brahm.
Ajahn. Very short question. What advice do you give us to practice the middle path without going into the extreme end?
Extreme ends is just learn to understand how service to others is also a form of chaga. It's a form of energy for your own meditation. but you balance your life between service to others and sitting down peacefully by yourself. And you find that if you force yourself to do anything in this world, it's negative. It's just a waste of energy. So learn how to put enjoyment, see the beauty of actually helping others, and also how that helps yourself as well. Because service is developing renunciation, developing the sense of non-self, developing, you're not here just to look after yourself, you're here to, I would say this purpose of life. Part of the best thing in life is to serve others and to serve yourself at the same time. In other words, learning how to let go more. But if you do any service, don't do any service expecting results. You do this with no expectations. I really mean that. You just give, not expecting anything back in return. And that is real giving. And this also means when you sit on the meditation seat, sometimes you're tired, sometimes you think it doesn't work, but just give that time as your gift to the Buddha. Because that's what the Lord Buddha wanted people to do. And just that much, just sitting an hour on a meditation seat, I give this hour to the Buddha. Not for me, it's for my teachers and the Lord Buddha especially. And then you sit down there and see what happens. And you want something out of it, that's a big problem. And it's a gift of charity, a charga of dana. Give it to teachers, to the Buddha himself. Ooh, that gets powerful.
Thank you, Bhante.
All right, so we have just 2 more minutes to go. But Ajahn Brahm, I would like to take a question from a layperson from Poland. Actually, she sent me the question in Polish, but I had to do a Google translation. I don't know whether it is correct, but let me read it out. I have a question about mindfulness meditation. I have breathing problems, psychological reasons, and asthma, and any focus on my breathing causes me to either stop breathing because I focus too much on it, or I breathe very hard and just think about not stopping breathing. Do I have to focus on the breathing during meditation?
No.
Okay.
just what is comfortable, what is peace? Sometimes I find great power in this when somebody is very peaceful. What is peace? What is comfort? What is ease? No, real ease, real peace, deep peace. And just sit there and just don't do anything and just enjoy the peace in the mind. And that can take you very deep. But don't ever force anything.
All right, so now we have come to the end. I'm just wondering whether Bhante Yogavacha Rahula has anything to say today. Bhante, can you unmute yourself?
I was just enjoying listening to Ajahn Brahm and all the questions and the answers. But I might have just one question concerning the Rupa jhanas and the Rupa jhanas. You mentioned in the first jhana that all the senses were shut down, the physical senses, so you're not experiencing any sensations through the body, eyes, ears, nose, or tongue. But that seems to be a definition of the Rupa jhana, where you transcend and go beyond all sensory impressions. So I just wanted to hear your take on that.
Yeah. That's not how I understand the jhanas. In the jhanas, that even the first jhana, that the 5 senses are shut down. It's one of the reasons why the Buddha said the thorn to the first jhana is sound. In other words, that sound can actually take you out of that jhana. If the jhana is not solid and deep in the first jhana, then the sound can take you out. but the second jhana, even sound can't take you out. It's one of the reasons why we have sounds, alarm clocks to wake us up in the morning, because even a state of semi-consciousness or unconsciousness of sleep, the sound can penetrate. It's also that if this happened 1 or 2 times, some of your disciples in a jhana, it's time that the retreat is over, and you've got to somehow or other to get them out. And the way to do that is just to whisper very gently in their ear with lots of kindness. It's time to come out now. Meditation retreat's over. Please come out now. And if it's not threatening, but it's sound, they're close to their ear, it can actually penetrate and get you to come out of the jhanas. Out of the first jhana anyway. So it's proved to me that even the first jhana, second, third, fourth jhana especially, the 5 senses have stopped. There's even this one gentleman, I'm just going over time a bit, he wanted to perform an experiment. This is over in Sri Lanka. That one of his disciples very easily got into jhanas. He decided to experiment because this man was a doctor, and so he got out a scalpel and tried to do an incision on this man's arm while he was in first jhana or second jhana, not quite sure which, but he was certainly in one of them. And the knife wouldn't penetrate the skin. So it's amazing. He tried to cut, but wouldn't cut. And so afterwards, when he came out of the meditation, he told him what he did, and the disciple was just very at peace with what he was doing. And he asked afterwards, said, when you go into jhana again, is it all right if I try and make an incision? And this time the disciple said, okay, I'll give you permission for that. So the next time he went into a jhana, this time the knife penetrated, made a small incision. And of course, he, what's it called, disinfected the area and put a bandage on so it didn't get infected. And afterwards, he was fine. But it's interesting that in those jhanas, he could not be affected just by even a cut of a knife. But when he gave permission, he could be. Interesting, but anyway, the pain was not felt. Sense of body had disappeared. And that's, the jhanas. They're deep because some things which you've always thought were there have now just disappeared and gone. So that's how I understand, the jhanas and the arupas. So it's not just the arupas where the body has disappeared. First, second, third, fourth jhana, the body has disappeared. That's my understanding of it.
All right, so I think we have come to the end of the program. I know Ajahn Brahm, when I posted this program in social media, one of the titles I put as the Buddhist Seinfeld. And so normally you tell a lot of jokes and people laugh, but today we had the serious discussion with the monks and nuns, and there were no that many jokes. But it's okay. But I remember you telling me this story, like when you came to Toronto, your first visit to Toronto to give the public talks, invited by our devotee family, Dr. Spiel and Indivalpola. And he said, you met 2 ladies in Chicago airport. And so they approached you. They were so happy to see you. And they said, well, thank you for changing our life. And we are big fans of you on YouTube. And we can't forget your name. So then they said, who can forget your name? Your name is Ajahn Brahm. So,
and I said there's an M on the end.
So anyway, so this is just a joke. But Ajahn Brahm, we are truly, truly grateful to you today for accepting our humble invitation to teach us, to have this friendly discussion with us, the monks and nuns in North America and South America, also from Europe. And we learned so much. And I know today, I think we had to kind of disappoint some lay people. They asked questions. So Dave, our assistant, if possible, please copy those questions from YouTube and Facebook. Maybe later on, we will email these questions to Ajahn Brahm. And I said, that's the only way to help. So Ajahn Brahm, truly, we are grateful to you. And we are giving you the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha for long life, for good health, so that you can inspire many more people in the world so that they can benefit and you can change their life. So before we have a tradition of ending today's discussion or the bi-weekly discussion. So I would like to invite Bhante Sankicha from Detroit to recite the Ovada Patimokkha verses.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sabba papassa akaranam kusalassa upasampada sacitta pariyodapanam etang buddhana sasanam kanti paramang tapotitikha nibbanang paramang vadanti buddha nahi pabbajito parupaghati samano hoti parang vihetayanto anupavado anupaghato patimokhe ca samvaro mattanyuta ca bhattasmin pantancha sayanasanam adhichitte ca ayogo etang buddhana sasanam.
It was wonderful, Bhante Sankicha, beautiful chanting, recitation. Thank you so much. And this is our last bi-weekly Sutra discussion for year 2021. And in 2 weeks' time, we are going to meet again in year 2020, maybe first week of January. And Ajahn Brahm, I have another humble request. I know you're so busy with teachings. And when today we were supposed to discuss about women and liberation something. And but when I heard from you, and I changed the mind, I said, this is the real opportunity. So, so we wanted to have you today. And you're going to teach every day until the second week of January. But in the future, Ajahn Brahm, we would like to have you among us so that we can learn more from you. And this is my humble request. And we monks and nuns would like to give you all the blessings of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha for long life and good health, your physical well-being and health and safety. May Corona never ever get you ever in this lifetime. And may Corona not get any monk, anyone in the world, and nobody should suffer from that. And may Devas continue to protect and guard you and all of you. And may all sentient beings be well, happy, and peaceful. Thank you.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Good night.
Okay. Good morning. Okay. All the best. Thank you for inviting me. Bye-bye.